Blaine. Anyone? Anyone still online?
I am. It's Joe.
Hi, Joe.
Councillor Kaufman. Can somebody just give a wave if this is working, please? Thank you.
Let's do a roll call.
Councillor Campbell.
Here.
Councillor Carlson.
Here.
Councillor Croson.
Here.
Councillor Higgin. Councillor Morrow.
Yeah.
Councillor Miyashiro. Councillor Parker.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Kaufman.
Present.
Mayor Spearman.
Here. So we're missing Councillors Hagan and Miyashiro. We'll hope that they will join us shortly. Do we need a review of options 7, 8, and 9, which were probably our last 3 requests to the city manager? Okay, yes, go ahead. Dalton?
Perhaps I'll just try and, so Michael went away and worked on this and based on the feedback we heard this morning, but I just want to try and capture some of that feedback, either to correct it or to enable the conversation. So what we believe we heard earlier was that there was a concentrist and interest in spending on life cycle building repairs to the largest extent possible. So we've gone, and you'll see in options 8 and 9 identified greater opportunities to do that, to the tune of 8.3 million. I would just add that there would be some risk there in terms of that's a lot of money to push through in the time frame that we have available by the end of December 2021. But we did hear that council seemed to be generally interested in maximizing that, and that's under the resiliency stream with an 80-20 cost match, which is positive. We also heard an interest in not moving totally away from transit and in focusing on some priorities for transit. So you see those there to varying degrees across the 3 options. Again, the only point to note there is that that's a 60-40 cost match, 40 fed, 60 municipal, and you'll see that reflected in the city's spend on those options. It's also important to note that based on our conversation with our colleagues at the province and the intent of this program, that there's a message here to where the municipality is comfortable and interested to move money to the resilience side, because the intent here is all about spending money. And if we leave money in that transit pot, it's difficult to predict the future, but given the times that we're in, there would be risk if we're not able to spend that money in the near future, that, again, that money might not be there down the road. We're not saying that's going to happen. We're just saying that's something we've picked up in our conversations, that there's a clear intent here to get money out the door, and therefore this opportunity to shift the money from the transit stream to the resiliency stream. And the last point I'd raise is there was some concern over spending money on broadband, and also a desire to spend money on broadband, recognizing the incentive to the business community, both existing businesses and the possibility for that to play a role in generating investment interest. And you'll see that we went with a very modest investment in broadband in options 7 and 8, and a little broader investment option in option 9. So that's what we think we heard from the conversation earlier today. I don't know, Michael, if there's anything to add to that.
Hi, on Bonnie. Sorry, just one other point. We heard a request from a couple of councillors if there was any opportunity for an extension. I did make the phone call. What they will allow us to do is send an email by September the 30th indicating what we're doing, and then a more formal letter by the 6th of October.
It's the same thing pretty much, isn't it?
Correct.
Okay.
But
Kind of like the checks in the mail, right?
you did ask, we did follow up, and that was the
I
response.
appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank
Can't
you.
hurt to ask. Thank you, Michael.
Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mayor Smith. I guess maybe we could break it down by chunks. I'm just wondering, because I do appreciate that you've put in each of the options, the sort of today funding, and then down below the future transit-oriented stuff. But today, I think we're really only interested in figuring out what we want to spend today. So I don't know, I just want to sort of poll my colleagues. Are we interested in even talking about the future transit things that are in part of these? Or should we just talk about the ones that are basically the today or the email by September 30th option? I think
Mayor Spearman, if I
Michael has an answer, maybe.
Okay.
Sorry.
Mr. Kelly's going to answer, and then I'll go to
I just wanted to add this other point of information based on Councillor Carlson's speaking, they did ask us on the transit side to identify what we're spending it on and how much.
Okay.
That was the clarification that I received this afternoon.
So they want that info as well. Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Kaufman?
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. I just maybe didn't make myself clearer earlier. There was a part of me that felt that we maybe had a loophole in what was being proposed by the federal government, as I see it, and I stand to be corrected on this. I don't like talking about loopholes publicly, but here we are. If we were to flush the transit account, as we were given permission to do, and throw everything into the resiliency stream, we could then feed money back to transit projects, which would put greater money into the community now and would create the opportunity to strengthen the infrastructure supporting the changes that we've done to operations within transit. And then we don't have to worry about whether or not funding is available in the future. That was what I had actually proposed earlier the first time I talked about option 6. So it wasn't actually anything to do with coming back and doing the 40-60 split on transit. It's about feeding it all into COVID resilience stream, taking care of what we can right now with the feds taking 80% of the cost. That's part of the reason why, for me, broadband could come off the table. So I don't know if that answers. I don't know if that answered Councillor Paulson's question. To me, it was about dealing with everything in one shot.
I need clarity on that, Jeffrey, if you don't mind. I don't understand what you mean about funnel it all into resilience and then funnel it back to transit. I don't think that's on the table.
Just going to clarify.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry.
Clarify.
The resilience stream, it was clear to us from the government that you could not use it for transit projects. However, Councillor Kaufman, I think what you're suggesting is using as much as possible for other projects that might free up, like the federal gas tax for transit in the future. Is that correct?
Yes, that's the type of approach I'm looking at taking. That's why I asked my question earlier today about whether or not the parameters were broad or were they defined. And your response to me was that there can be some creativity there, or they're looking for projects. And quite frankly, we can do construction projects faster than we can do an awful lot of other things. So why are we not transferring that money as much as we can out of transit fund, but put it back into transit projects, or projects that are municipal infrastructure, municipal buildings, mobility projects that will support what we're doing in transit.
So other transit projects being transit terminals or wayfinding, things of that nature?
Well, yeah, again, back to the master plan. I mean, the reason we have these master plans, we have the capital budget, is so that these aren't just sort of a flying by the seat of our pants and we'll pick and choose. There are defined things that need to be done. They're not huge things, but they're small things that can at least support the system. So to me, it seems like it's a no-brainer to get those things checked off the list instead of going to the grand, because we kind of put up a barrier for ourselves. Well, we can't do the terminals because we don't believe we can get them done in 2021. That's fine. If that's what we believe, great. But then we're taking everything else off the table. We're not being creative in how we're putting this together. That's all I'm saying. So if we want to take the whole transit thing off the table, that's fine. I see an innovative approach to solving multiple problems for our community and our present.
Thank you. Mr. Dalton?
Yeah, I just want to make sure I understand what you're suggesting, Councillor Kaufman, about being creative. And I'm not sure what projects you're referring to in the transit master plan that we might, if I understand, you're saying there might be other projects in the transit master plan that we want to fund? I'm just trying to understand what you're recommending.
Yeah, well, what I'm what I'm suggesting is that we know what needs to be done in the transit master plan to provide the supportive infrastructure. I keep going back to wayfinding because it's the simplest, and I'm not talking about new signage on the new routes. I'm talking about actually what is being suggested in terms of practical signage that at stops, upgrades to stops. We've talked for years about the stop at Walmart that actually doesn't connect to anything. There are a number of those around the city for mobility and accessibility. This is where you become creative. It's about strengthening the system and the network in a way that makes it user friendly, makes it usable.
So
But again, I'm providing you with the broads. I'm assuming the experts in the room know the transit master plan and know the things that need to be done to create a better experience, a better system to support the changes we've made.
Yeah, and I'll ask Scott to weigh in, and I think one of our challenges, again, is just where we are with this funding, and what we're trying to be as creative as we can. I'm not sure, Scott, do we have a master list of things we haven't considered here that we want to be throwing on the table, or?
If I could just speak a little bit on behalf of the transit master plan. And so when we're making these transit changes to our routing system, we have to do timing point. There's a number of different things we have to go through before we make the changes to our system. And so we have to do timing, we have to redevelop schedules, we have to do route design. We take that, we coordinate with the union. So we go through this whole process. And so if we were to put up, say, for example, Wayfair signs, we'd be challenged with making that change and then having to possibly redo the signs, etc. So we're in the process of completely redesigning our entire transit system to incorporate transit on demand combined with our CityLink routes. So I think with that in mind, our Wayfair sign project would be a part of the new route design and transit on demand. We would go through that as part of the project to make some of those changes now and then have to make those changes again. Probably wouldn't be advisable.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Move on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. My question is, this is a competitive process, right? The government may or may not fund these projects. Is that correct? There's no guarantee we'll get this money.
What it actually, sorry.
Go ahead.
What I actually state is that we are to identify our preferred projects, and the province will work with us to get the funding from the federal government for those projects that you desire to choose to do.
Okay, so that sends me a very important signal. So the government is going to be more motivated to help us if we select projects which align with their goals. Not just providing employment, but ones that provide economic stimulus, right?
Correct.
So if we simply put in projects that don't really have any economic benefit post-construction, they're probably not very motivated to help us.
I'm not sure it's quite that black and white in this case because, I think you're right that their priorities are clear and they've articulated them. They've also described parameters for this funding.
Okay.
So I think it's and they've identified that $13.1 million bucket for us. So the types of things under the resiliency fund that they've described are not necessarily or not solely post-construction economic contributors, but I think it would be wise to consider that as we do this.
Okay, so do we have projects that, when we talk about building repairs, is that just R&M, or is that going to have some benefit afterwards, or is something like Legacy Park going to appeal to them?
Our assessment is Legacy Park fits within the description of the resiliency
Yeah, and Legacy
Lot of
Park
money.
and Legacy Park is also a good tourism item that we promote for.
Okay, so we can promote it as a tourist project, okay? And life cycle, how can we promote those as supporting economic development?
When, I can't. When we reviewed the items, we initially took a look at life cycle costing items, projects, and we actually weeded them out. And why we weeded them out was some direction from the Economic Recovery Committee to ensure that it aligns to the province's priorities. But it's not a criteria of the resilience stream.
And again, this goes to us being forward-thinking, and we do not have a bucket of projects that are shovel-ready, that can be completed by 2021, that contribute to economic recovery post-construction. And so that's why we're looking, and Michael, maybe you can hit those criteria again for this fund?
That's where I'm a little bit confused. So we don't have a bucket of projects, but we would spend $8.3 million on life cycle?
If
We don't
that
know
money
what
was
those
made
are?
available to us under a program like this, absolutely. If we're able to access this money to address spending pressures that we know we're going to have, and it meets the criteria of this program, in the absence of better projects that are economic generators, my recommendation is we should certainly put those forward, unless we have something better. And Michael, maybe.
So the letter that came from Alberta Transportation, signed by the Minister of Transportation, Rick McIver. The eligible projects include retrofits, repairs, and upgrades of municipal buildings. That would take into account life cycle. COVID-19 response infrastructure, including measures to support physical distancing, repurposing infrastructure to support pandemic response. Third, active transportation infrastructure, including parks, trails, footbridges, bike lanes, and multi-use paths. 4, disaster mitigation, adaptation, and remediation projects, including natural infrastructure, flood, fire mitigation, tree planting, and related infrastructure, and remediation of contaminated sites and lands.
I get where you're coming from, Chris, right? Because, I mean, the province will have a look at these. But if you look at some of these, they have a regional aspect, right? Like if you look at our swimming pools and things, the region uses it. There's a sales pitch to the province if we want to. If you're looking at some of those life cycle costs, if one of those things breaks down, that's taxpayer money. So we're not going to put any pressure on the taxpayers if we do some of the life cycle costs. Certainly how we spin this could be very effective for the province and the federal government's grant. So there's certainly a way of achieving both of those. But one of the things I know I've said about this is let's hit a broad range. Let's do stuff that saves us money, that is, has maintenance for us, something for the community like Legacy Park. And then if we do a small broadband for businesses, then you're hitting all of them. You're showing that you're thinking about the entire community's recovery. That's why I think you've got to have a variety of things that we're applying for, because not only does it show that there's a lot of need in Lethbridge, but it also then shows that we have thought of, again, community, getting our own house better in order, and businesses, and we've thought of those all. And that's why I think you put in a slate of options, and then you can show. And broadband fiber will have, again, if we did that, it would have some regional elements as well, because some of our businesses are here and in the region. So I think any of this stuff that we have proposed, we can very easily tie in with provincial concerns as well, because there's all sorts of elements to it. And as we're saying, Legacy Park has a tourism element as well. It also has a health element. I mean, I certainly think we are hitting not only what the province wants, if we do need them to promote this, but certainly what the resilience program is there as well. So I think the menu is broad enough that we can match it all.
Yeah, I'm just trying to make sure I fully understand what's going to qualify and what's not. Okay, thank you. Councillor Higgin?
Thank you, Chris. And just back to a question that you had, and I just need some understanding here. We're talking about Legacy Park being a tourism thing. Can someone help me understand how that's different than other parks, or are all of our parks tourism? I'm just a little perplexed by that. How are we selling that? I mean, I don't mind saying what we need to say to get money, but does that work? I mean, I'm just trying to figure that out.
I'll respond to that. City of Lethbridge has the third largest urban park system of anywhere in, I believe it's the world, Doug. That is a big draw for people from a tourist perspective. All of our parks added up together, and all the components that go into that survey all serve some unique individual and groups in all different varieties of ways. Legacy Park is the component that we're going to add into in this project would add to an educational component that would serve younger peoples. We have other parks that serve and give opportunity for disabled or handicapped persons. We have others that have great gathering places like the Elks Picnic Shelter. So all in all, it adds up as one great big nice tourism package.
All right. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Kaufman?
Thank you. Sorry, Chris, I'll step out for now.
Okay, Councillor Carlson?
Thanks, Mayor Spoon. Getting into specifics, I like option 7. My question around it is, because it does utilize all of the dollars of 13.1 or 13.2, whatever it was. But it does give a lot, as Councillor Crowson said, to the community right away, and we can get some stimulus out there and going. But what is the commitment level? If we have to provide our plan, and we've got transit terminals, other transit projects, electric bus pilot project in there, does that mean we're tied to that? Or can we shift as we go through our changes in the transit system, and we may identify other projects that are lower hanging, better accessible fruit? Can we change those, or is this now, this is what we're doing, this is our 10-year or 9-year GOS plan or whatever it is?
What I was informed of today is that they'd allow some minor adjustments, but that was not and would not be defined to me today.
Okay, so if we went with option 7 and put this forward, it would give us some broadband fiber to start with, the Legacy Park Discovery Play Area, and the life cycle of 5.2, as well as reserving the remainder, I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, 6.3 to transit under these projects that we could fine tune later. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Then I would like to support that option.
Hey, I think I support option 9. I think it addresses economic development, and it has the lowest risk and the lowest contribution from the city.
Can I ask a question of that? Then where would we ever fund the transit terminals and other transit projects and bus? Where would we find that fund?
They would come out of gas tax in the future. I would say option 9, and I think it gives us the economic development catalyst, and then the net contribution from the city is as little as 3.2 million, doesn't tie up too many city dollars, and then in the future we would get the funds from the other grant programs.
Clarity on that, can we get 8.3? I thought we only had 5.2 million of identified life cycle projects. Can we get 8 out the door?
Thank you, Councillor Carlson. In the 3 hours that that we had for a break, working with Mr. Adair's team, we were able not just to identify the $5 million, but another $3 million approximately to bring us up to 8.3 million for life cycle projects that we feel confident that we'd be able to deliver by the end of December 31st, 2021.
And there's capacity in the community and in the organization to project manage and do all that?
Yes, there is.
Excellent. Can we have a list of those?
Can you give me that list? Your list there.
You send those by email, Michael, or?
The clerk did send that out in your package earlier today, or late this afternoon. And I'll just go over them just so you can recall what we had on before and what was added. So the Labor Club ice plant, Nicholas Sharon ice plant, City Hall cooling tower, Fritzick steam boiler, the Labor Club North Wing air handling, and the Nicholas Sharon pool roof. What we added was the energy retrofits, Fire Hall number 2 roof replacement, Soccer Center lower roof replacement, and the Public Operations Stores electrical building roof replacement, totaling $8.37 million.
If we're confident that we can get the gas tax money for the future transit projects, I will support option 9.
Thank you. Councillor Campbell.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify on the option 9, broadband, fiber, or NMAX parking? What,
That
just,
that was a typo.
okay, so it should be just broadband.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Deputy Mayor Kaufman.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. We're back to where we were before. If we go with option 9, where we're putting $7 million back into broadband fiber. And I'd like to see that actually, in the spirit of satisficing, I would like to see the majority of that pulled back out and put back into transit, whether it be the terminals or other projects. And I would be fine with the $2 million investment in broadband fiber. Recognizing it's going to increase things, but also it's about, as Councillor Crowson identifies, spreading it out to the community.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Higgin.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Looking at option number 9, I do prefer when we're only paying 20 cents on the dollar. And if I look at that broadband fiber and what we've talked about over the past years, is there a way, what I would like to know is what's our ROI on putting in that broadband fiber? Is it something we look for in the future to be able to at least have a return on our investment in that, if it's by way of dark fiber or et cetera? Is this just for, I know it's for our infrastructure as well as connecting those in the community that don't have it, but are we going to be able to utilize that for a return on our investment in the future by putting that full amount in?
I'll ask the city manager or his designate to respond.
Yeah, if council recalls the presentations we made in June and July, the broadband ultimately does pay for itself. There is ROI. There is a payback period though that is quite lengthy in the context of what we believe to be the lease rates, the current competitive lease rates. So that ROI becomes, it gets realized sooner if in fact we can find other sources for the capital as opposed to doing it all on the backs of a future lease customer, an ISP.
So thank you, Doug, for that. Could you tell me then what kind of a timeline? I know it pays for itself, and sorry, it's been so many years. I know I was really involved in this in its infancy, and I'm just wondering what kind of a timeline are we looking for? Because you stated ultimately will pay for itself. Do we have a timeline for that? Because if that's something, again, I really like spending 20 cents rather than 60 cents on the dollar if we have the federal gas tax fund that can go towards transit in the future, and if broadband fiber is a council, is something that, in the CIP, I know we've kind of been putting it along, but if it's something, so I guess short sentence, how long before we start to see this ROI?
So in the context of option 9, where you're investing $7 million and recognizing that it's scalable, it's not the full pilot area, the entire existing industrial area in the west, or on the in the northeast side of the city. I would suggest with a capital investment like this from the government, the payback would be just over 10 years as opposed to the 40 years that we're talking about in the event that we have to rely solely on the ratepayer, the leaseholder, to actually cover our costs.
So just to be a devil's advocate on this with broadband, then if the life cycle was down, the broadband was to what the total amount was, would it drop it from 10 years even lower, or are we just looking at its? Can you help me understand that?
So again, it all comes down to take rate. And take rate is the extent at how quickly we will in fact find leasees for the dark fiber itself. We've been very, very conservative in terms of the pro forma to date, and that's why quite a protracted debt servicing scenario and a lengthy point at which we reach profitability. If we reduce if we're a little more optimistic and we market hard and that take rate goes up in combination with an actual capital investment that essentially eliminates any debt servicing, any borrowing, and those annual costs, I think it will in fact do what you're suggesting, Councillor Hagan. It will realize a quicker payback and ultimately a quicker positive cash flow from an ROI perspective. I wouldn't hazard. We'd have to revisit the pro forma in great detail, but if you're looking at a payback and a profitability in 10 years, you're doing pretty well, given the nature of what we're trying to do here from an economic development perspective.
But we were, sorry, just to continue with that. So we were looking at before at the whole cost and getting a payback in 10 years. Correct me if I'm wrong. And now if we're putting in the 1.3, should not that be dramatically sooner, or is this just be? Oh, I'm seeing what you're saying. You said 40 years.
It was 40 years. Yeah. It was. 40
oh,
years.
I'm sorry. If we did the whole thing.
That's right.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Miyashiro.
Thanks, Chris. I really don't have any questions. I have, I like option 9. I like the fact that we can get some revenue stream going from broadband more quickly. And I believe if they continue with the gas tax or anything that looks like gas tax payback, that will go back towards transit. We're going to have a revenue stream. We're going to have the broadband fiber. It's an economic driver in our industrial park and other parts of the cities. I'm all for option 9, and I have to go in about 6 minutes, so that's my choice.
Okay, thank you. Would anybody else like to express a preference?
Mr. Mayor, it's Joe. I have a question.
Okay. Joe, go ahead.
Thank you. Regarding the NMAX parking lot, I know that it sounds like most of you don't believe that should even be considered, but let me just throw something out there. Do we even know what we are doing with the NMAX? If we, like, I guess what I'm thinking, and I'm just thinking, if we have no intentions of selling it, and we're going to retain this asset.
May I have a motion to go in camera, Your Worship?
We could go in camera. Joe, the way you're asking this question is something that's quite sensitive.
Okay.
So
sorry, I thought we. Okay, are we?
We haven't made a decision, and we have to be careful what we say.
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought we were in camera.
No, this is a public meeting.
Okay, I thought this part of it. Is there any public there?
It's live stream.
Okay. Okay, I'll back off because. Well, yeah. Let me think about this.
Okay. Councillor Carlson.
Mayor Spearman, just a question. We're talking about ROI and payback. A lot of these projects that are coming up, the life cycle building, repairs, upgrades, is there not like an immediate payback on that? Because those are things that we're sort of budget for year to year, and so these are kind of cost avoidance for us. Is that one way to look at it? Try to answer, Carlson. It's always a fun game.
Who's going to answer Councillor Carlson's question?
Councillor Carlson, so the majority of these would be included in the operating budget in terms of life cycling maintenance, and so some of these are advanced slightly just in terms of the timing. So there might, I think what you're asking is there an opportunity to kind of swap it out? So there is some pressure to our life cycle in terms of our facility maintenance, and we would just have to look at kind of what the overall need and plan is for the next budget cycle and CIP cycle to see if there's kind of capacity to do that. But I know there's been some significant draws on our life cycle, the Yates project and other projects like that they've been under some pretty tight pressures to get the work done. You can see on that summary that the Fritz Sick has been deferred since 2013. So there's just some things that have been delayed. So I wouldn't want to suggest that there's, a one-for-one swap out, but we'll definitely look at that.
Yeah. And the nice thing about those life cycle projects is there's a whole lot of small ones. That means employing local contractors, right? So there's a benefit to the local economy. So, Deputy Mayor Kaufman?
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. I was just going to make the same point about the benefit to the local economy through all those small, through the building repairs. Have to remember that a lot of our trades aren't working in the housing industry at the moment, so we've got some capacity there. Just for clarification, based on Councillor Morrow's line of questioning, the NMAX parking lot is not included in option 9. It's not included in any of these options, correct?
Right. That's correct, yeah.
So that is just an error.
Yes, it was a typo.
Sorry, for clarification though, that is an option or that was a project in other options, was it not? Or
Yes,
is that
it was.
totally gone?
It was. Yeah.
Okay, so it's just not part of option 9, but it's still something that we can consider.
Yep.
Thank you.
It's one of the first 6 options, or in several of them. Yeah, thank you. So we're dealing at the moment with the ones that council had outlined for consideration when we were initially looking at the options. So we looked at 6, and different members of council said, could we try this? Could we try something else? So Michael has come up with options 7, 8, and 9 based on what council had requested. Councillor Higgin?
So can I finish my line of questioning?
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
No, that's quite all right. I usually just hang up. I'll continue. Thank you.
No, I thought you had finished. I apologize. Yeah, sorry.
No. It happens regularly. I just normally pull out a line and just go back in. But on this particular one, when we look at something like option 8, and again, we've driven up our cost by adding in the electric bus pilot project. Option 8, if we took out the electric bus pilot project, actually brings it down into line with option 9, does it not? Why do we have to keep jacking it up if we're shooting for that low number to get the best bang for the buck? Why do we keep jacking up the price by putting in the electric bus pilot project? Would 8 not be an option if you just took out the e-bus?
So that would basically bring it down to what, something about be about $1 million difference in terms of the city's contribution. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
We just seem to be operating on an all or nothing principle here, and again, trying to be creative, trying to look at different ways of meeting everybody's objectives.
Councillor Higgin.
Thank you. Can we just scoot up there to option 9 again? quickly. I just, in looking at that I just want to be sure that, again, trying to get our contractors back to work and trying to get those that are trades in, etc. Broadband fiber, could someone help me understand, is that going to be a lot of local work? Is that our city employees, or is that city contract work? Is it going to be within Lethbridge, contractors within Lethbridge that will be able to see this benefit? Can you help me understand that?
Mr. Dalton or designate?
It's civil work. It'll employ local civil contractors, similar to what we do in terms of deep utility work today. So the material itself will come from outside the city, the actual fiber optic cable, but the actual work itself is traditional civil construction, shallow utility work. It's not city employees. This will be a contract service construction contractor.
So, but that will be work done by those in the community. That was the other question I had. If it's going to be city staff, are we going to be able to get other projects done that obviously we didn't have this on our list of things to do, but you're saying this is going to be contracted out, other people spending money in our community, and those jobs will be within our community is what you're telling me for all three of those things. Not even just broadband, but if we go down to Legacy Park and the life cycle will be within our community work.
I believe the answer was yes. Could one of Mr. Dalton or Mr. Hawkins tell us all these projects basically would all benefit the local economy?
Yeah, we can't guarantee that because we have to go through the procurement process.
Right.
But you know, to the extent that a normal construction project or a construction project requiring civil private sector engagement and not city staff, it would proceed just like any other project.
Okay, then I'm leaning more towards option number 9 again, just for the mere fact I do like the transit terminal and getting money into transit, but at us paying 60 cents on the dollar rather than 20, if we have the federal gas tax fund and other things in the future that we could use for that, I like what option 9 currently is.
Thank you. Councillor Campbell.
Yeah, I'm going to add my weight to option 9 for the most of the reasons that everybody has said: economic development and tourism, life cycle building repairs, and a good bang for the buck on transit. So yeah, I'm going with number 9.
Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. What's the due diligence on these projects, and what's the risk? I've been here for some time, and when other orders of governments dump a ton of money into every municipality, I see prices go through the roof and competition go through the roof. Who's on the hook if we've got budgeted X, Y, Z, and it comes in at 3X, 4Y, and 10Z?
I'll respond to that. There's a lot of due diligence. I'll speak particularly to the life cycle cost items on behalf of the facilities. We're constantly going out to the market with various life cycle projects, so we have a very good grasp of what these costs are for each and every project, and the staff there are constantly refining that information. The Legacy Park project, as pointed out by Councillor Kaufman earlier, in D27 it was originally tagged at $1.855 million. Our due diligence more recently has been able to bring it down to $1.2 million in total cost. And as for the fiber optic, Doug, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, we are not concerned in terms of the capacity of the civil contractors given the current level of inactivity that's occurring in the community today in terms of greenfield development and new servicing in new neighborhoods. So at this particular point, we do have a detailed estimate of the cost to actually supply and install fiber optic cable right now. I think it's conservative as well. So, and again, it's scalable so that we will not exceed the budget in any regard. Even if for some reason the economy were to drastically change and the competition was much different than it is right now. So we're pretty confident with these numbers.
Thank you. On that one, I appreciate that it is scalable, so we can always scale back, but the life cycle ones, if we put these in a...
Just to add to finish off, to answer your second question, your second part of your question. Ultimately, if we do go over budget, it will be the responsibility of the city. However, it is our due diligence that we've done before and throughout the project to ensure that it's scaled to meet the budget, if not come under.
It could all be scaled. Thank you.
You. Okay, looking to hear from councillors who haven't yet spoken. Yep. Councillor Parker.
Thank you very much.
Acting Mayor Parker, sorry.
Yeah, don't worry about that. After seeing what I've seen before early this morning, I didn't know which option exactly because I want to get the biggest bang with the least amount of spend. I like number 9. I think number 9 is a good compromise. It makes sense. And I'm glad that you went back and came back with this. So I would go with number 9 right now. Quite comfortably too. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Croson.
Well, number 9 is certainly getting a lot of attention, and it has the big themes that I was looking for. It supports various things, you know, our community, make sure we fix some of our own, do some of our own maintenance, has business employment there, it has economic development. And so I think 9 will satisfy all the different issues that we're looking for and give us a breadth of things. So I will support number 9.
Thank you. So I believe every councillor has spoken now. So I think in order to give direction to administration, it's a public meeting. I would ask for a motion to support option 9. So moved from Councillor Carlson. All in favor? Any opposed?
I am.
Okay. And Councillor Kaufman?
My silence indicates.
Silence means approval.
Okay. And Councillor Higgin?
In favor of 9.
Okay, so vote is... He expressed a
No,
desire
but he didn't vote publicly.
He didn't vote. Okay, didn't vote. Yeah, okay. All right. The vote is 7-1 in favor of proposing option 9. Is there any further business today? Okay, I just thought I'd ask. I would entertain a motion to adjourn. If so moved by Councillor Campbell. All in favor? Any opposed?
Blaine.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Blaine.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you to Mr. Dalton and his staff for the information. And thank you to my colleagues for your cooperation. Thank you.
Chris, what is the process going forward?
Yeah, you'll need to sign it.